Hello once again, Arizona. Welcome to the Asset Preservation Hour with Stuart Willis. He is the founder of Asset Preservation Wealth and Tax right here in Arizona. We are at the Tempe Broadcast Center. Stuart, how are you doing this week? How are the markets doing?
Well, they're all over the place as usual. I'm doing fine, you know.
Good.
Always exhausted from, long days of work, but having a good time doing it.
Yeah. Incredibly busy. You've got your television programs, your radio shows, and one of the things I wanted to ask you about, we got a caller into the radio show recently. I thought we'd bring it to TV here. You keep saying we're in the most tax-efficient window in history. So, folks, we're going to talk about tax efficiency and why it's important to your wealth strategy plan in retirement. Can you explain what you mean by the word efficient? Why are you saying we're in the most efficient tax time in history?
Well, because first of all, taxes are low relatively, and I think that a lot of people sometimes can't see the forest through the trees. So I always like to show this one slide that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a slide to show you what our tax environment looks like, and I'll revisit it in just a bit. But this slide here is our current tax brackets in red. Now, if you take a look at that big zero on the left side, that's the standard deduction. Obviously, there's more people paying 0% tax today than ever before. Then we have, the way I look at tax brackets is going from 10% to 12% is a small jump. Going from the 12 to 22 is a huge jump. The 22 to 24 is a small jump, and then the 24 to 32 is a huge jump. And then it's kind of incremental from there, from 32 to 35 to 37. But the reason I talk about the efficiency spike is that these tax brackets, a lot of people perceive them as only benefiting the wealthy. And as I showed you before, that, most of our clients are in that 22 to 24% tax bracket, nearing retirement or in retirement. And it's a super efficient window. What you also have to realize is that they're going away at the end of 2025 if Congress doesn't act. And also remember, I don't care if you love Trump or hate Trump, it doesn't matter. But just look at the brackets for the math, okay? Remember, those brackets there are very, very efficient now. And they're reverting back to that blue, right? So the 22 to 24, or the 22 is going to be 25 to 28%. The 24% is going to be 28 to 33%. The 32 is going to be 33, and then, 35, and then 37 will go all the way up to the 39. So at the end of the day, taxes are going up if Congress doesn't act. And remember, when Trump was able to lower taxes or get it signed into law, he did it during the greatest economy the world's ever seen, right? It was great, internationally, domestically, everything was good. Well, look, now Europe's at war. We're in this crazy standoff with China and Russia ourselves. We're in this kind of tense environment. And not only that, we spent trillions of dollars to stimulate our way out of COVID. And I think the first one or two made some sense. But what are we, $7-9 trillion now into total stimulus plus this recent omnibus bill? I mean, so Congress is spending money like crazy, and someone's got to pay that back. And the reason I talk about tax is I believe it's going to be the people that have done their job and save money, right? The people with higher incomes are going to be the ones that pay the higher taxes. Now, here's the thing to think about. Like I said, when Trump got the tax cuts done, the economy was great. So do you believe that anybody's going to be able to get a tax cut done now after all this stimulus, all this debt that we've acquired, all this inflation?
Right. And then one of the places we've been just socking money away have been in those tax deferred accounts. Mm-hmm. So do we keep socking money away in the tax deferred accounts, or do we need to start looking at other options?
Yeah, I think financial planning has to include, taking a look at multiple tax strategies as well. And a lot of advisors don't even tackle the issue. And there's a few reasons I believe that's the case. But you've been doing what you've been told, right? You've put away money into your 401ks, your 403bs, your thrift savings plan, your deferred comp 457 plan if you're an Arizona or other municipality worker. And I think what people aren't realizing is, oftentimes it's even if their income drops in retirement, what they're doing now is making other things taxable that don't necessarily have to be, like Social Security. I don't want to go off into that rabbit hole too much, but just know that does it really make sense to defer taxes to a time when they go up in the future? You know, and does it make sense to create this big tax time bomb? You know, I tell people all the time, you know, once I talk to them, I realize, you know, after having a tax office that most people don't ever consider what's going to happen in retirement. They just listen to that mantra of, hey, your income's going down in retirement, so your taxes will go down, right? But what I see, you know, invariably is people that end up not enjoying their retirement because they're now afraid to pay the tax bill. I talk about this story all the time. Had an 83-year-old client. He came into my tax office and we were filing taxes. We were doing a review of not only his taxes, but his finances. And I saw he had about $3.5 million in his IRA. And I was like, wow, sir, you should be proud. You've done a great job. An 83-year-old, which meant he went through a decade or so of required minimum distributions, and he still has about $3.5 million. And I said, man, you should be proud. I know you really, you know, must have, you know, having to give up a lot. You gave up a lot to put this money away. And he looked at me, and his eyes just started tearing up. And he said, Stuart, I have all this money, but I was so damn afraid to pay the tax bill that I never got to enjoy it. My wife is dead. We never took the trips that she wanted to take. I have all this money. Now what am I going to do with it, right? Yeah. And I think that's the big problem is that, you know, a lot of people are saving up their money because they're A, afraid of running out.
Right.
B, sometimes just impressed with the amount that they have, you know, and they don't want to lower it. You know, I had a client that was stuck on a number that he didn't want to drop below, and the problem is, you know, when you do real tax planning, you know, you have to understand it's not just the number that's on the piece of paper there, because that may be a pre-tax asset. Remember, you owe money to the government if you have an IRA or 401k. They're just waiting for their payment, right? So if you have an IRA or a 401k or a 457 or a 403b, it's not all yours. A big portion of it belongs to the government. And what you want to do is learn how to diffuse that tax time bomb over time in a very efficient way so that you aren't at the end of your year saying, I wish I did this. I was afraid of the tax bill, because people start seeing when they take distributions out of their IRA, well, now they may be paying more penalties on their Medicare, or they may pay higher taxes on Social Security. And I think it's really important to have a plan.
It's incredible to me that as a financial advisor, you focus so much on taxes. So before we go out to break, will you explain what the holistic plan, the entire review is? Because it's not just about taxes, it's also about wealth management and that income spending.
Yeah, so when we do a review for a client and we analyze everything, what we're taking a look at is we are taking a look at what kind of risks they're taking. We're also asking what kind of risk they're comfortable with. And oftentimes those things are dramatically different. Those answers are dramatically different. What we're also doing is taking a look at what kind of hidden fees are inside people's portfolios, right? But we're also really focused on tax. We want to be really looking at what is going to happen now. We start cash flowing out to take a look at what's going to happen in the future, what kind of Social Security benefits you have, and how they're all going to mix together. Because just remember, you know, you and I did a workshop here at the Arizona Broadway Theater here in the West Side, and so, you know, and what we called it was the perfect financial storm. Because look, you know, a lot of things are converging right now. You know, when you turn 70 years old, well, what happens? That's the latest you can take Social Security, potentially taxable. What happens at 72 now? That's your required minimum distributions, taxable, right? And so as these income sources converge, as you've delayed taking them, you could end up in a much higher tax bracket than you ever expected. But what you don't want to do is not be able to enjoy life. You want to make sure that in retirement you have a plan. And if you're concerned that you don't have a real cash flow plan that considers taxes, or maybe you're taking too much risk, if you have those concerns, what we're offering is the complimentary portfolio review. If you pick up your phone right now, you click on that QR code, We have operators standing by right now. What we're offering is that complimentary portfolio review. And we will take a look at what kind of risks you're taking, what kind of fees you're paying. We'll take a look at what kind of tax planning we need to consider for your estate. Have you done your estate plan? Have you done your living trust? If those things, or maybe you have a living trust and you're giving everything to your, to your 5-year-old kid who's now 35 years old, right? Sometimes those things need to be modified. If you have concern that your plan isn't current with how you currently feel, then pick up your phone, click on that QR code, or give us a call. Take action today. We'd be glad to help.
Thank you, Stuart. We're going to take a very short break. As Stuart says, call the phone number right here. We do have to limit it, though. We're broadcasting all around the state of Arizona, so please, for the first 10 callers, we can do that complimentary review. Yes, I know we're here on the weekend, and as Stuart says, when Monday comes around, you might forget about it. So jot down this phone number, call it as soon as you can so you can make your appointment for your own complimentary review. More with Stuart Willis right after this.
People are really concerned about outliving their money. Inflation, taxes, volatility in the markets, legacy. That's what people are really concerned about. Listen, I love what I do. When a client of mine can know with total confidence that they're going to be okay. At Asset Preservation, that's exactly what we do. Not only do we look at your investments, we look at your taxes and estate planning as well. We don't leave any stone unturned. That is what a real holistic shop does. Provide a very clear roadmap so that you know it's okay to enjoy retirement. Success is being able to sleep at night. And at the end of the day, what we provide at Asset Preservation is not only the market expertise by institutional money managers that are some of the biggest and best in the world, but we also provide complete advice. You need to make sure you have a plan. What you can expect from us is to let you know the truth about your portfolio.
Welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour with Stuart Willis. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Every single week, Stuart addresses retirement planning solutions for you. We talk a bit about income and goal setting. And goal setting meaning to be able to spend down is the story that you were just talking about. A lot of folks are saving their money and they're worried about, am I going to be okay? Am I going to run out of money? And they're not able to enjoy it. By actually putting together an income plan, you can tell them to enjoy themselves. But I do have to revert back to it. You seem to spend a lot of time talking about taxes. Is that our biggest expenditure in retirement? Is this why you focus on it so much?
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest expenditure necessarily, but it's an expensive one. It's a high one for many people. But the reason I speak about tax all the time is because I know other people aren't, right? Like I kind of jokingly say that for the first decade of my financial career, I was faking it. And what I mean by that, it wasn't intentional, right? I only knew what I knew. But until I owned a tax office, Spike, I didn't know any better, right? And I didn't see the results of what happens in people's taxes by making different decisions. And so when we created the tax office, it basically gave me an insight that was just drastically different, than most other people. I mean, this year, I think we did right around 1,500, 1,700 tax returns.
But you do those for clients.
We do, only for our financial clients.
It's not just a, hey, call me, we can help you get tax-free income in retirement. This is part of the wealth strategy.
It is, and it was open to the public at one time, just the tax preparation side of our business. But as we got just absolutely packed, what we started to realize is we really wanted to focus on the clients that were focusing on us.
But you're right. It seems like I just don't hear that from many financial advisors focusing so much on the taxes.
Well, I think there's a reason. I mean, number one, I think the one reason is most big box firms prohibit their advisors from talking about tax. We've noticed one of our local competitors, and God bless them, let them have a good time doing it. But they started kind of having tax conversations on their local TV show, and we realized that, oh my gosh, they're talking about this stuff, but they really don't have any resources to execute, right? So listen, I hate tax season. It's the bane of my existence. It is a nightmare. I jokingly say I'm a man of leisure, but people realize I probably outwork most people on the planet, right?
Will you please stop texting me on Sunday mornings?
Oh, I know, I can't. My mind is always going. But no, taxes, If your advisor is giving tax advice but doesn't have a complete tax staff, that's also a problem. But most big, I'm glad that at least locally we're starting to change the conversation. It's having an effect on other firms because, listen, we've got a loud voice here. And, I know I talk loudly and I know I talk quickly. And, but with our radio show, our TV show, I think our tax forward planning has really become contagious, and people are starting to, try to emulate it. It's difficult, and they've got years ahead before they can figure it all out. But it's an important thing. But most big box firms prohibit their advisors from having these conversations because they don't want the liability. Number two, advisors do the least amount of work necessary to get paid. Right? Listen. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I've got, people that I mentor all over the country, and, I see them on Instagram, and they are literally at this golf course or this country club or some vacation, golfing and having. These guys, I wish I had that life, right? But I realize that by adding the tax component, it adds a lot of additional work. But let me just tell you, the information is worth it. What we get out, the final product, makes it so much better. It makes it way better. So, they do the least amount of work necessary. The other thing is that, quite honestly, think about this. A lot of what we talk about is Roth conversion in our tax plan. And what a Roth conversion is when you take an existing IRA or 401k, you pay the taxes now at what we believe is a lower tax rate, and you strategically decide where you place your income, right? So that's what our Roth conversions are. Well, think about this. Think about what we've just gone through. Last year, the S&P is down 22%. The 20-year Treasury ETF from TLT, which is iShares, that was down, 33%. So the market collapsed. So think about from an advisor's perspective, right? They typically have bosses that look at their performance, how much they have under management, how much they've grown their business. Well, the market just lost, let's call it 20% for easy math, right? So what if they went to every single person and pretend they managed $100 million? Well, their $100 million is now down to 80 because of the market downturn, right? Now they're going to go to those same people and say, hey, we believe that, look, the market's down. All of the rebound that's going to come is going to be tax-free. That's really good for you, which we believe also, right? So we think, all of our IRA clients need to convert to Roth. So they're going to pay another 20% for easy math on $80,000, right? That's $16,000, right? Yeah. And so now their $100 million or their management funds under assets under management, which was once $100 million, is now $64 million because they converted it all and had to pay the tax on it. Who's going to give themselves a 36% pay cut, right? That was caveman math.
So you're saying a financial advisor who receives a fee for assets under management, you feel that they're not motivated to tell people about a Roth conversion because it would be less money in the advisor's pocket?
Well, yeah, just like that story I told you about the 83-year-old man that, that never spent his money. That's the trap. That's it. That's the big secret in the financial industry. If your money is in an IRA or a 401k and you have tax concerns, here's the thing, you're never going to use it. Guess what? That's perfect for the advisor. Why? Because your money is essentially locked up with the fear of having to pay taxes, and that money never leaves. Here's the thing. People realize that their advisor, may not be the right fit. They may not personally like their advisor. They may not, trust their advisor. They may realize that their advisor doesn't talk about tax. But here's the thing. People don't make a change. People are willing to tolerate bad relationships for a long time in this financial industry, right? They just don't, I want to say they're just too lazy, too busy, whatever.
I think, to be fair to the audience, they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know how the service can be better. So I do want to ask you, how are you different? How can you help identify? What should they ask their advisor?
Well, number one, if you're dealing with an advisor that doesn't have access to tax planning, that's a problem. That's a big issue, right? And if you're concerned that you're stuck in that position where it's not a good relationship, that you need to make changes, but you're just going to get to it Monday or get to it next week or get to it when you have time, guess what? You're never going to make a change. You are exactly the person we're talking about. But if you realize that you are in this relationship that isn't perfect, that isn't great, you're dealing with someone that you don't particularly like, well then sometimes it's time to get a second opinion. It's time for a change. And if you want to find out whether or not we're a good fit for you, we'd be glad to do a complimentary portfolio review for you. So if you pick up your phone, you click on that QR code, you click on complimentary portfolio review on the website, or we have operators standing by here. Give us a call now. We'd be glad to give you that second opinion. And what that appointment will do is find out if we're a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us. It's just like a first date, really getting to find out whether the chemistry works.
Right. Folks, call the phone number right here so you can get your own complimentary review. Or if you want to think about it, get a second opinion. Or are you your own financial advisor? Do you know how to do decumulation strategies in retirement, how to be tax efficient? If not, call the phone number right here. More with Stuart Willis right after this.
Right now, the market is a big mess, and oftentimes people feel lost. So while most people are scared, you need to know that you're going to be okay. I'm sure you have a lot of concerns about whether your portfolio really fits you. And if you need help, all you have to do is give us a call. At Asset Preservation, what we offer is a complimentary portfolio review. We can provide that fresh set of eyes to give you that second opinion. You can't get a second opinion from the guy who gave you the first. You want to make sure you're dealing with a fiduciary. We'll give you that fiduciary perspective. If you have a relationship with a financial advisor that you don't entirely enjoy, I think that's a problem, because these relationships are not meant to be short term. They're meant to last a lifetime. You don't want to deal with people you don't like. If you have concerns about your portfolio, you need to give us a call.
Welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour with Stuart Willis. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Every single week, Stuart tries to help you, Arizona, with retirement planning solutions. The thing is, Stuart, the playing field constantly changes. The laws are constantly changing. There's been a couple of new ones from this year. We never know what's down the road. It's a constant risk for folks. How do you keep your clients abreast of what's going on and maybe help avoid what happens when the laws are changing?
Well, I think it's about, being a student of the environment too, like really paying attention. And look, I think legislative risk is a big risk out there. When we talk about diversifying your risks, it's really difficult to be in front of the legislative stuff, and we are in this constantly evolving time. We don't know where the future holds and, what direction we're going to go in. I know, we were concerned about Build Back Better as an example.
Oh, yeah?
Build Back Better really scared us. There were a lot of kind of proposals inside there that talked about getting rid of step up in basis for capital gains, which means that when you die, you pass the assets to your kids at the current market value and all the capital gains go away. We're trying to get rid of that. Build Back Better was also attempting to retroactively raise the tax rates during the year. And the reason they couldn't do it, to say, hey, next year taxes are increasing, is they realized there would be a big rush out, from a capital gains perspective or from a sales perspective. So, Build Back Better, thank goodness, kind of went away and, died the death it should have died. And, but it just understand they're out there. Those risks are out there. Secure Act, right? Let's talk about the Secure Act.
Okay. And the new one, the 2.0.
Well, even starting back on the first one, I was one of the people that, tends to use my stage to be able to voice what I feel about things. And so I went back to Washington, D.C., with a group of other advisors, and we had meetings with some of our Congress people and their staff. Some of them made time for us, and some of them didn't. Like, I know Andy Biggs' staff, they made time for us. We didn't meet with Andy himself, but Dave Schweikert out of Scottsdale made time. He's great. He's a really smart guy, really neat guy to get to know. If you kind of forget about all the goofy political commercials and get to know the human being, I think it's a really neat touch there. We also met with the staff of Kirsten Sinema, who is fresh inside office at the time after newly beating McSally at the time in that election, and met with Debbie Lesko over in the West Valley as well. She was great. And I'm telling you, oftentimes the personalities you see on TV are completely different than what you get in person. But the one thing that I realized is these people, you know, Kirsten Sinema and Dave Schweikert in particular, really, really know what their constituents want. They know the constituents inside and out, and I was really impressed with them. And so what we were doing is trying to get we were trying to delay required minimum distributions, and they were calling it the Secure Act. Well, we were pushing hard to be able to delay required minimum distributions to 72, and we got it. But we got something else that we didn't want, Spike, and what we got was some additional things that actually Democrats kind of put into it, which was they were trying to compress the amount of time that your beneficiaries had to take distributions. And let's understand this. So let's say that your plan this whole time was you're going to put away all this money tax deferred, and then, you know, your spouse, if you have one, would inherit it then and be able to take it out over their life expectancy. And then when you both are gone, then it passes to your kids, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kids, or, you know, but when you pass it to them, you would pass it to them over their lifetimes, right, to spread the tax consequence out. Well, what Democrats actually were pushing for was to have that within 5 years, to have it compressed within 5 years. Now, they settled on 10, but still figure this out, right? It's no longer over their life expectancy. You're now passing this big tax burden on to the kids. And yes, you're giving them a bunch of money, but now they're way more constrained in terms of how they can diffuse that because, you know, it basically gets transferred into an inherited IRA or a beneficiary IRA, and you can't convert that to Roth. So if you have concerns that, you know, that the laws are going to change and maybe you get stuck in this tax time bomb, then what we're offering is that complimentary portfolio review. It's time to take action and find out whether or not a complete tax plan will help you. Pick up your phone, click on that QR code, or give us a call. We'd be glad to give you that second opinion on your portfolio.
Stuart, thank you very much. Yeah, it sounds like it's time to do our tax and estate planning. We can't put it off. And the best thing to do, come in for that complimentary review. I know you've got offices all around Arizona. We can't take everybody, but call as soon as you can. For the first 10 callers, we want to get you in for your own complimentary review. Thank you so much for watching the Asset Preservation Hour with Stuart Willis. He will be back again next week.